Hello, I'm here today with my friend, my brother, my confidant. I call him Master Mike Martinez. Say good morning, Mike.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here. I love anytime you and I get together. It's like the meeting of the minds, and we always spark really good ideas among us, man. And I just truly appreciate you as a friend and a mentor. So thank you.
Yeah, today we're going to discuss something. It's how to have a successful marriage. And some of you might say, well, why did you pick him? Well, because he's been married 40 years. I don't know what your definition of successful is, but that is definitely successful by today's standard. We're going to discuss some of the statistics, why some marriages don't work, what you can do to overcome them. Mike gonna give you some of the things he does to keep his marriage successful and moving forward. And we're both so excited about this because the whole thing is to help somebody move through the quagmires and pitfalls of what goes on in marriages. And you might say, well, what qualify you? Well, I am licensed ordained minister of the gospel. I marry people. And before all this took place, when I was marrying people on a regular basis, I counseled people for 10 weeks before I would marry them because I wanted to give them every opportunity for their marriage to succeed. And without any further ado, we're going to discuss all this right after this. Okay, Michael, before we get all the way into this, there's just a couple of things I want to share with you, which you probably already know. Some of the statistics here are almost 50% of all marriages are going to end in separation or divorce. Okay, and the ones that get married for the second time, 60% of those marriages are going to end in divorce. And for the third time, 73% of the third marriages will end in divorce. So don't get it twisted. Just because you did it before don't mean the second time you're going to be better at it. From these statistics, you're going to be worse at it. United States is sixth on the list in all the divorces in the whole world. Number six. That is bad. That means we're doing something wrong. And now I'm getting ready to turn over to you, but I want to ask you one question two questions really, but it's in one frame. This is what I personally believe is the cause of a lot of divorces. Then you will address it however you like. One of the ones is unreasonable expectations. Okay. And the other one is they don't feel the family is worth fighting for. With those two things being thrown at you, the floor is yours.
Well, I'd like for you to clarify for me and probably for the audience what you mean by the expectations being, beyond what people can do. What specifically do you mean
Okay.
by that?
Here's an example, unreasonable. That's why I use unreasonable
Right.
expectations. Some things are reasonable. I expect for you, if a woman marry a man, she expect for him to put a roof over her head, somewhat take care of her. Unreasonable is for me to expect for us to get married, that they had the greatest, fabulous wedding ever been placed on the face of the earth, and the biggest church, had the most people there, had the greatest catering service, which automatically put you or your parents in a huge debt. Now I expect for you, my reasonable expectation is for you to put me into this lavish home, mansion, driving around a Rolls Royce and different things that unreasonable. I mean, for you to put me in a car is reasonable. Rolls Royce is unreasonable. A home is reasonable. A mansion is unreasonable.
Right.
You know, I expect for me, my bank account to always be above where it should be. Unreasonable, because their bills has to be paid if you're not used to it. That's what I mean by unreasonable.
Okay. And that's good, man. You know, I had one of my mentors that used to say that sometimes women say, go out there and conquer the world. Just make sure you're home by 4, right? And that's one of the things that you're saying that's unreasonable.
Unreasonable.
For me personally, and here's what I think is one of the biggest things that creates this divide with people, is that you got two separate individuals coming together as one, right? In the union of a marriage. And so the woman has her ideas about what relationships should be like and how she should be treated and what she expects, and the man has another. And so what really has to happen is that you got to create that unity. Now, in the beginning, and this is something that happens quite often, in the beginning, when you're courting somebody, you're flexible to fit into their model, so that way, you know, the other person says, oh yeah, this person is perfect for me. So you're both kind of willing to kind of be flexible about what you expect, and right. But then after a while, that courtship starts fading, and you go from now wanting to be flexible to now demanding that it's your way. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So that creates a major divide. And then people start saying, oh, this is not the person that I wanted to be with. This is not the person I met. This is not the person I dated. And so you start creating an even bigger divide. And that's what happens. I'll tell you, one of the things that I think Nelly and I have gotten together and have been able to do is that we kind of keep that spirit up. You know, I used to practice martial arts. One of my my main instructor, he's an old Japanese guy, kind of reminds me of Master Miyagi from the Karate Kid. But he was one of these old guys that used to give you, you know, a lot of philosophy and stuff.
Right.
And he would say all the time, he would say, listen, you got to come into the school every day as if you're a white belt. Why? Because when you're a white belt, you're energized. You want to work out hard. You want to impress. You want to learn. But then sometimes when you get a brown belt or a black belt, you feel like, oh, I've been doing this already for a while, and you don't put the same effort. And the same thing happens with us, right? And sometimes it happens within 6 months. Sometimes it happens within 2 years, where we start fading away. We don't have that courtship energy anymore. And that's something I think we need to keep.
You start taking each other for granted, in other words.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and I use a different phrase, but it's the same thing you said. We come in a relationship with different baggages. You got baggage from your past relationship. I got baggage from my past relationship, and we bring all that baggage in there. If you're not willing to sit, and that's why I said I used to counsel people ahead of time, because of the simple fact for 10 sessions, not just a counsel, 10 sessions. And one of the things I wanted them to do was is write down everything you like and dislike about this person. Always amazed me when they so in love, they couldn't find nothing wrong. Everything was right. Until they see the other one have a list of things wrong. Then they'll start, because when you only give me everything you like, I say, okay, I'm gonna hold this. When you start having problems, I'm gonna bring this back to you, your remembrance that you remember you said now, okay? One of the things you told me that you did to keep it fresh, keep it new, was used to have family meetings. A lot of people have family meetings, but not the one that like you had. They would have family meetings where they could air their grievances. How did you handle that? But you did it differently, I believe.
Yeah, well, as a father and as a husband and as the head of a family, right? I think it's important for men to kind of step into that leadership role in the family, right? And now that doesn't mean that you're a dictator, that you're the general, that you're the president. What it means is you're kind of guiding. I think leadership is a matter of pointing in a certain direction and having other people look in that direction, right? So when I used to do family meetings, I used to do meetings within my family with my wife and my kids. And I used to prepare questions that I wanted to understand the answer to. And let me give you an example. If you ask a person, what makes you feel you loved,
Right.
right? What
Great
what what
question.
has to happen? Yeah, what has to happen for you to feel loved? Now, some people are going to say, well, if you hug and kiss me, I feel loved. Some people are going to say, if you tell me every day, that you love me, then I feel loved. If you spend time with me, I feel loved. If you buy me presents, I feel loved. Everybody got a different a way of demonstrating that, of interpreting those actions in their mind. Now, if your wife, let's say, feels like she needs for you to spend time and she needs for you to hug and kiss her in order for her to feel love, but you're thinking that if you buy her a lot of nice jewelry, you take her to trips, she's going to feel love. She's not going to necessarily feel love because of your interpretation. So
Right.
it's important for you to understand, hey, my wife is this way. So I used to do these family meetings and I would have my journal and I would ask everybody, I would ask my kids, I would ask my wife, what makes you feel loved? How do you know you're loved? Oh, I'm loved because of this and this and this. And I used to write that down. Okay, Nellie's my wife. Nellie feels this way about love. She feels love when I do this thing. Oh, my son Mikey, he feels love when I do this thing. So I would know, and that way I would be able to affect them on their terms, right? The way their mind communicates the feeling of love, I would be able to work on that way.
Yes. And you know what? There was a book written a while back called The Five Love Languages, which
Mm,
which epitomizes what you just said. Because we make the mistake of thinking people want to be loved the way we want to be loved. So we force that on them, and by doing that, we push them away from us, not realizing that's what we're doing. And then we say, okay, I'll double down. I'll do it twice as much. But it doesn't. It just pushes them twice. You have to love them the way they want to be loved. And
yeah,
go ahead.
and you know what? It's also important for you to let the other person know how you feel loved,
Absolutely.
right? Because they may think that, okay, I like being hugged and kissed, and that's my way of feeling love. Everybody must feel it that way.
Right.
That may not be the case,
Right.
right? So you might have another way of expressing that, of interpreting those actions, and they need to know that,
Right.
right? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, 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 cool. Because this is our conversation. So, and that's what they used to tell people in this book. You get your book and you get your wife a book so that y'all can explore. Because now when you sit down, you got a common place to go to. So yeah, and I was reading a book and it said this this is the way I've been loving you, but maybe that might not be the right way. And from what I read, I need to give you a chance to express how you want me to love you, because I want to love you. Because the more I love you the way you know what, it's here's an analogy. It's like putting money in the bank.
Mm,
When you love somebody
absolutely.
the way they want to be loved, you're putting money in the bank. So that when you miss some time or don't do it right, that they drawing out, but you still got something left there. But if you always taking out, never putting in, sooner or later it's going to be empty, and you're going to get an overdrawn, which usually ends in divorce.
Right,
Now,
right. And you know what's interesting? what I find is interesting is that little idea of describing what makes you feel love, it's not just for that, because you could also say, you can also ask, what makes you feel disrespected?
Yeah.
Right? You could ask your wife, what makes you feel disrespected? And she might say, well, if you talk down to me, if you scream at me, if you walk away from me, whatever the situation is. Now you know what makes that other person feel disrespected. And you, again, should say, listen, this is what I feel makes me feel disrespected. If you do this, if you do the other, if you ignore me, if you, whatever it is. But once you understand those values, right? The value of what makes me feel loved, what makes me feel disrespected, what makes me feel whatever, right? If you understand those things, then you can feed that to the person or avoid feeding them, right? In the example of disrespect, if you know that a person, if you yell at them, they feel disrespected, then don't yell, right? Then you know that that's the trigger that they got.
And you're absolutely right, because I remember years ago, men had the habit of saying, my old lady. And to them, it sounded cool and debonair, but to the women, they didn't like it. Because you calling me old. I ain't old. and you think it's cool, and you just keep saying, and they resent it. But like you said, until you sit down and ask what it is, because they will tell you, because in some of these meetings, I'm telling you, you'll be surprised at some of the stuff that was being said. Like, here's one to address what you're saying. Well, so you never tell me you love me. You know what a lot of the men said? Well, I told you when we got married. And if something changed, I'll tell you. That was their attitude. It was wrong. Because what the woman is telling them, I need to hear it more than that. And you're telling me you don't feel like it's worthwhile. I'm not worth fighting for. And that brings me to my next question. Some people don't feel the family is worth fighting for, because if you thought it was worth fighting for, you wouldn't be so quick to get a divorce. Now, I'm not saying that every divorce is not necessary, but you and I both know some of the divorces just because, I'm sick of you. I don't want to be bothered. You don't got old. You don't look as good as you used to look. You don't have 5 babies for me. So now stuff that used to be firm and tight is now all loose. But what they forget, you don't look like you used to look. How would you address that?
Well, you said something very interesting at the beginning of this when you were talking about the statistics, and the statistics are absolutely right. And the reason why they're right is, if it's 50% of marriages end in divorce, but then if you've already had one marriage end in divorce, it's a lot easier for the next marriage to end in divorce, right? And then if you had 2 marriages that end in divorce, it's a lot easier to get the third. And some people, as you know, get 3 or 4 marriages before they finally get it right, if they ever get it right. But what happens is that you kind of lose the value of a marriage, because think about it. When you marry somebody, and this is the way it should be, a lot of times it isn't, but when you marry somebody, you should be 100% certain this is the person I want to live the rest of my life with, right? And so that's a lifetime commitment. That's something that you do for a lifetime. Now, what I tell a lot of people, and what because I come through situations like this in my own family, where I have to talk to people and say, listen, I know you want to divorce this person now, but how do you know that the next person is going to be any better? How do you know that the next person will be worse, right? So again, it goes back to being that person that you would go back to when you were courting. There was something about that person when you first met them that you said, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about them. Oh my God, I love being with them. Oh my God, I love the feeling that they give me. My belly feels like it got butterflies in it. What happened to that? You could be in a marriage for 40 years and still have that, right? But it's a matter of sometimes we just allow things to float away. And you can't do that, right? So again, my question to a lot of people that are considering divorce is, what's the difference that you brought into the relationship? Because it's easy to point the finger to the next person and say, oh, they're not the same person that I started with. But are you the same person? Right?
That's
What
right.
changes do you need to make? So we're easy to point to the next person and say, look, oh yeah, they don't cook for me like they used to. They don't dress up for me like they used to. But what are you doing, right? Like the example you gave. Hey, I've been married with this woman for 5 years. She had 5 kids. Things are starting to sag now. Hey, how about you, man? What's sagging on you,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of little things. The bottom line is that most people do not want to take personal responsibility for their own marriage and what they're putting into it, and the results that they're producing. So that's what I say. Look at yourself first and see what's going on there.
And that's why I use that phrase, is your marriage, is your family, your marriage worth fighting for? It's easy to give up. It's but has always been, always will be. If you think it's worth fighting for, you will. You don't care what
Right.
the odds are. If you think it's worth fighting for, you will. And like you said, what was it that made me think it was worthwhile to get involved with and make that lifetime commitment that I no longer want to do it? There's a scripture in the Bible, Proverbs 5:18 say, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. And what it is saying is, that woman that you met in your youth, you should rejoice with her throughout it all. You can't use her up. Like we just got through saying, now she don't have the 5 kids. And you weren't, she don't cook for me like she used to. She don't have time for me like she used to. I'll never forget when my baby was born, Demetrius Viola was born, I actually started disliking her because the wife would spend more time with her than she did with me. She was taking time from me, I mean, actually I overcame that and ended up spoiling my kid. But at first, because I was used to having all that time to myself, now I don't. There's so many dynamics to this, because once you let me tell you this real quick. There was this great preacher, and he was go out doing his thing, revivals, casting out demons, healing folks, doing all this stuff. And he came home one night, and wow, he walked in the house like the demons had took over the house. The wife screaming in the house, and the kids running all over the place, all this, that, the other. And he runs out to his garage, and he go into prayer. He go into warrior prayer. So he comes back in, and like it's worse than it was before. He runs back out there again and go through the whole thing all over, get all the prayer, calling down. Oh man, he doing it up now. He go back in there, it's worse than it was. He go back out to the, and the Holy Spirit said, "Oh, stop with the prayers. What you need to do is go back in there, get you a vacuum cleaner, wash some of them dishes, give her a helping hand, and you'll see how things will change." Sometimes we so busy doing we come home and don't want to do nothing and don't understand that the wife is wore out from the battle she is going through with the family all day long. Instead of us helping, we're making situations worse. What's your take on that?
Well, it's very interesting that idea of, is your family worth fighting for? Here's the bottom line. When you speak to married couples that have put the time in, I'm talking about people that have been there 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Yeah. What you're going to find out is that the more problems that they face together as a family, the more issues that they had to overcome, the stronger they got. Now, the people, and I hate to say it this way, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but here's the bottom line. If you're facing a problem and you're ready to quit, you're out, then you really got to see, how strong your mind is, right? Because the bottom line is that That's how you become stronger. If every time you face a problem, as a simple example, let's say I wanted to start a business, right? This is outside of the family deal, but
Right.
I want to start a business and I got this big dream and I'm gonna chase my dream. And then the very first obstacle that I get, I say, I guess this is not meant to be, and I walk away from it. Then did I really want that dream?
Right.
No, you can't say you wanted it. Now it's the people that go out there and say, man, I got a problem. What do I do? And you face the problem and you overcome. That makes you and your wife stronger. Down the years, you know what, the very interesting thing is this, that sometimes you look at a problem and you're saying, this is the problem you're having today. It's a huge problem. It's the worst problem you can imagine. And you're saying to myself, oh my God, what am I doing? What I got to do? Oh my God, this is the terrible thing. But 5 years down the line, you look, and once you overcome that problem, you see that that problem made a little shift and it took you in a totally different direction. And because of that little shift, now your life is a whole lot better.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Think about that. Now, there's some people that in that problem state, they could say, oh, I'm so stressed out. It's your fault and I'm out of here. And that's it. Right? Yeah. Now you start fresh. And then what happens when you got a problem? You got problems. It's a part of life.
That's right.
So are you ready to give up on every one of those, or are you willing to fight? Are you willing to make it happen no matter what you're facing? And that is the key. I think, my wife and I, we've gone through some really challenging times. I mean, challenging times. Some things that I don't are so embarrassing, I don't even want to talk about them. But you know what? Because of that, we learned the lesson. And here's the thing, you don't fail if you learn the lesson. If
That's
you're
right.
facing a problem and you learn a lesson and that lesson makes you better prepared to face it the next time, then you're in a stronger position, right? So
Right.
now me and her, we're in a stronger position as a couple, and we could face that the next time it happens, right?
Right.
A lot of times a divorce happens because of money issues. And what happens? A lot of times it happens because the economy is the economy. And sometimes the boss says, hey, Akey, I don't need you anymore. Get out of here. Don't come again. And you get fired and you've been in that job for 18 years. And now you got that stress. Oh, my God, what do I do? How do I keep the roof over my head? How do I bring the food into the house? I'm the leader of this family. And you as a man, and I know I've been there, man, you get stressed out because of that situation. But if you guys can come together and say, let's figure this out. Let's see how we could get over this, become stronger, become a better family, and somehow you figure that out. I'll tell you, there's nothing more invigorating. There's nothing more powerful to make you better prepared for the future than something like that. The problem is most people don't want to go through those things.
You know what you did because you feel like you accomplished something together. That's the difference. Do you know the most successful marriages? Now, for the last 20 years, I don't have the statistics, but up to the last 20 years, I had the statistics on this. The most successful marriages in America were farmers. Because
that's interesting.
Everybody had a defined place where they did. The wife knew she had to get up at a certain time, have breakfast at a certain time, and the husband knew he had to do something at a certain time, to eat a certain, because he had to go out in the field, and everything depended on them working together. Because if that crop don't come in, the cows don't get milk, or whatever happened with them working together as a unit to accomplish that, they won't succeed and they'll fail. So everybody got an investment in the dream, in the idea, in their future. So I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this come true, to make it come to pass. And I think because, and I don't want to make this sound more facetious than it is, that because we are career driven, I'm over here in my career, you're over here in your career, that sometimes we get the idea that our career is more important than the other person's career. And that makes a lot of time for separation, because you said, okay, sometimes money can be the problem. Oh, that's very well true. But what about all these movie stars, millionaires, sports players that's getting married 5 and 6 and 7 times? They got all the money in the world. So what? So the money ain't their problem. It's other issues that we've touched on that they don't feel is worth fighting for. They're not headed in the same direction. They don't have the investment in each other that they just felt like, okay, they don't look like they used to look when they used to take my breath away. So, but this young thing walking past here, oh, now that reminds me. So I'm gonna go. But in the end, they ain't nothing like an old fool, nothing. So we have to learn how to conduct ourselves. Isn't worth, to me, if it's worth fighting for, you're gonna do what it takes to keep that marriage together. Now, there are certain instances when you're in a marriage that's abusive. Now, unless you're doing something about it to take care of it, you need to get to a place where you can rethink that situation. I'm not going to tell you to get a divorce, because that might not be what it takes, but you need to get someplace safe where you can assess and address the situation.
Right. Let me interrupt you here. Let me interrupt you, Akey, because you and I had a discussion about this before, and I'd like you to elaborate on it because it was enlightening for me, where you were saying it's not a 50-50 situation. Talk about that.
Okay. A lot of times, somehow, I don't even know where this comes from. I know Teddy Pendergrass sung a song one time as a 50-50 split. But somehow we got that idea that it's 50-50. No such animal. Because there are times in every marriage where you might not feel like doing a 50% that day. I might only feel like doing 10%. And that means that the other person is gonna, in order for it to work, is gonna have to put 90% in it. If they don't, we're gonna have problems. So at every given turn, you got to give and take. You got to be willing to, okay, the day I didn't, well, yeah, oh man. And when they don't feel like it, you got to remember, a couple of days ago, I didn't feel like it. They put in all the work. So, and they're not acting like they normally, so I need to put in all the work. And so now we can, like you said, we can meet this challenge together. And because we overcame it together, we feel like we accomplished something. And you know what's the great thing about it? You start to be able to see it coming before it get there. So I seen this picture before. Listen, babe, I'm telling you right now, I see what's going on. We need to address this and meet it head on before it get there. And a lot of times, sometimes it just takes communication, because sometimes we just feel like we grown. I don't need to consult you every time I want to spend something. But if you want to buy a candy bar or something, you don't. But if you want to go out and buy a car or a new house, you need to talk to each other. You need to go through that process, because if it don't work, guess what? It's gonna cause problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? A lot of times, Akey, and I'm talking from a man's perspective, a lot of times us men, we say, hey, I'm the head of the house. I got the major decision maker. I'm the major decision maker and stuff like that. And up to a certain extent, that is true. The Bible says the man is the head of the house. I agree with that 100%. But we can't underchange the value that a woman puts in that relationship, in that unity. Because a lot of times, I can tell you, there are situations where I don't have the faintest idea how to handle it, and I let it fall on Nellie and let Nellie deal with it, because Nellie knows how to deal with that, right? If I was to put my hand in there, I'd make a mess out of it. But because she's such an expert at being a mom and being a wife and stuff like that, and handling the household things, whatever it is, if she's an expert at doing something, then I let her do it. If she sees that I'm doing something that I'm an expert in, or I'm the strength there, then she allows me to do that. And that's how we work things, right? There are situations where both of us need to come together. And like you said, sometimes it's 50-50, but sometimes it's 70-10, right? I mean, 70-30 or 90-10.
Right.
It depends on the situation and where you're at, and how powerful that is. A lot of times I think us men, and I know a lot of them, right, that I've spoken to, that feel like in every situation they need to be the number one answer or the final decision maker, and that's just simply not true.
Right. And you want to know something? And I know we run out of time. Let me say this before I get into what I'm going to say, just in case we run out of time. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. The book we referred to, The Five Love Language, there will be a description in the bottom so you can get that book if you want it. Not promoting that just for this, but if you want it and find out how to save your marriage, that's there. I'm going to say this to you. There, and God has used me to save a lot of marriages teaching this, because men had it twisted, like you said. Men thought they were supposed to control the money, and they had no clue about money. And I've taught them that if your wife is the person that understands money, if you want to keep your household together above water, then you need to let her handle the money. I mean, yeah, you got to oversee to make sure stuff is being done, but in the bottom line is let her handle the money, like you said, because you know why God puts us together the way he does? Because you got certain gifts that I don't have, and I got certain gifts that you don't have. And when those gifts come together, we can make it work. It fits. But if it's out of kilter because I'm controlling everything and I'm not letting you use your gift, we'll never get where we're going. And we'll always be frustrated, which will end up in divorce, until we learn to allow each other to operate in our gifts, to know that sometimes you're gonna have problems. They're just gonna be there. It's just life. Life ain't, you ain't gonna get in and out of this without problems. You get that. They're gonna come. The problem is how you handle it. You know, you got to build those marriage muscles. Say, you know, my family is worth fighting for. My wife worth fighting for. My kids is worth fighting for. I now realize I had some unreasonable expectations. I need to bring those down and put them in a reality. I'm not saying kill your dreams. I'm saying you cannot go on a job and expect to be the president. You got to start at the bottom. Anything you want to say before we close, Brother Mike? Been a pleasure.
Yeah, well, one of the practices that I think is a useful thing, and that we walk away from after we get, we go through that courting period. I think that courting period should be there all the time.
Right.
So my wife and I, I remember hearing that, it's a beautiful thing to have a date night, right?
Right.
And my wife and I started that, and it's a little dancing, a little drinking, a little, right? Yeah. And I go on Tuesdays and she goes on Thursdays now.
Right.
So no, I'm just joking, man.
Yeah, I know. I told that joke.
I'm joking. Yeah. So you know what? Every Sunday we make it as our date night. And we go out and it could be a simple thing. It could be that we just stay home, but we know it's our date night. It could be that we're going to see a movie. It could be that we're going to the beach. It could be that we're going wherever, but it's a specific day that we know this is for us to reunite, for us to rekindle, for us to enjoy ourselves. And we have a great time going out to eat, going to visit friends, going to different places. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing, right? And my wife, I'll tell you, she has this thing where she's a paparazzi, as you say. Yeah. She takes a ton of pictures.
Yeah, I see.
But that's what it's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a good relationship is about creating memories. It's about creating moments that you could go back and look at and say, or remember and say, man, I remember that feeling. Man, I remember that love. Man, I remember that excitement. That's what a good relationship should be all about. If all you're doing is thinking back and thinking about times in which you had problems and stress and crying and stuff like that, that's not a good relationship. No. You got to create more of those moments where you're laughing and enjoying and having excitement and stuff like that. So that's what I want to leave you guys. You know what? Start going back to where you began. when you started this relationship, what were you thinking about? What was it that excited you about that person? And see if you could rekindle that. See if you can attract them the way you were attracting them before. And I'll tell you, magic happens when that happens. Akey, I want to thank you, man. Thank you for inviting me for this conversation. I truly had a great time. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to do another one too, because there's another thing that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. It's called blended families. But there's a scripture in the Bible that says just what you said a few minutes ago. It says, go back to the old landmarks, which is go back to the memories to remind yourself of what took place, what happened, so that you can be reinvigorated, renewed. You can have that belief system again. And it ain't nothing like when you touch somebody, that electricity fly between y'all. All of a sudden you think you're yeah. Listen, don't forget.
And it happens.
That's right. Don't forget to subscribe. We hope that this helps somebody, because you know it don't take a lot. It just take you wanting to be willing to fight for your family. Listen, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. All of Mike's information, you probably seen it running across the bottom, so that you can get in touch with him to get more insight to it. Because not only him, but my pastor, who's also been married 40 years, him and his wife go out to dinners and have date nights and things like that. So this is something that's been done by the successful marriages. If you want to have one, check it out. We'll see you again. God bless you. God keep you. God watch over you. Bye.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, my brother.